Welcome to Between the Reads, where Black books are shared and celebrated all year long. I'm your host, Audra Russell. There are so many great things going on this year as I continue to amplify Black stories, but I can't do it without your support. Please consider heading over to patreon.com/betweenthereads and becoming a member, or make a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Amanda Ross is an indie author who writes new adult fantasy set in modern times. Her latest release, In the House of Transcendence, is a magical murder mystery set in Savannah featuring an all-black queer cast. Her Witchkind series, To Astera with Love, and its sequel, To Alaris in Desperation, is filled with magic, humor, and social commentary. She also co-published the YA fantasy anthologies Girls of Might and Magic and Kindred Kingdoms. In addition to her authoring, Amanda is also an author-tuber, one half of the horror podcast, the Horror Ho Support Group, and the marketing director of the Melanin Library. Amanda, welcome to Between the Reads.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been following you for so long and just been eager to get on here, so yay. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Did I say the name right? Is it Alaris?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I got it right. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's get right to it. Tell us what your book, In the House of Transcendence, is about.
So I've pretty much perfected the pitch for this book, which, and that's the thing. I think you and I have both talked about the importance of getting your pitch right. So, In the House of Transcendence follows a Black bisexual necromancer as she learns to control her powers, finds her true family, and solves a murder in Savannah, Georgia. Did I nail it? Did I get it?
Oh my gosh!
I
did you? You nailed it! I don't even have Bloodland nailed down like that. I would still be like, yeah, it's a book, and it's this couple, and they own a house, and there's a ghost. Maybe I should have you write my book pitch for me, so I can just be like,
Maybe that's like another tagline adding to my bio, my resume is book pitch connoisseur.
There you go. There you go. So now this book, it's like the perfect combination of spooky, suspense, magic, and sleuthing. Mm-hmm. What was the inspiration for it?
So I wanted to write a book where the necromancer was the hero. So often we have people who are necromancers, or necromancy is written as evil, dark, magic, all that. And I just thought, we have such reverence for the dead in pretty much every culture. Mm-hmm. We honor their memory. We talk about honoring our ancestors. So why, if somebody has this ability, would it necessarily be seen as evil? Why would that be? So I wanted the necromancer to be the hero, and with that came what they're able to do, seeing the dead, speaking to the dead. So I thought it'd be foolish to not have some kind of element of a death. And then the idea kind of came along from there. And I knew, obviously, I wanted to have a Black cast. I knew that I wanted the cast to be queer, given that I'm bisexual, and I wanted to provide that representation. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking about where to have it, because I thought, okay, there's death, there's cemeteries, there's ghosts, there's gothic vibes. I'm going to do it in Savannah, because we've seen New Orleans. Let's give Savannah some shine.
Right. So now, Zora and the other witches, they're burlesque dancers. I have never read a book about burlesque dancers. So where did this idea for their burlesque dancers come from?
Oh, I thought I wanted something. So I was watching a lot of P-Valley when I started conceptualizing this idea. And so I thought I loved the idea of a club kind of being a hub of community for people, and being where people go to see their friends and lovers, but also where they're working. And I didn't want to do a strip club, quite frankly, because I didn't want somebody thinking, oh, okay, so it's like P-Valley with magic. Let me just add a little separation there, which would be fine by me. Mm-hmm. But I thought I've always liked burlesque and thought if I were to get into something, I would try to do burlesque myself.
Okay.
So that's kind of where the idea came from.
Okay, now there are, speaking of burlesque dancers, there's that, and then there are very specific spells and potions that the witches use in the book. So between those two things, tell me about the research process for the book.
So for the burlesque, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos of burlesque routines. I was watching tutorials, and I was really trying to scrub to the internet to try to find like black burlesque dancers, because so many, you type in burlesque and it's Dita Von Teese, and no shade to her, but that's not who I'm checking for. So
right
it was trying to find like those routines, and then also just watching choreographed dance routines in general, trying to see how they go about the 8 counts and actually putting together a whole routine from start to finish, because in the book there are at least 1 to 2 full routines where I'm kind of describing the whole choreography. So that was part of the research. The other part was figuring out what songs would go with these routines, and then essentially kind of trying to mock them out in front of my mirror.
Okay. That must have been fun.
It was fun, but it made me think, I think we like to think we're a little bit more coordinated than we are, but doing it in front of the mirror really shows you who you are. So it was a whole lot of me trying to, wait, do I move my arm like this? Would it be like this? And so that was a big part of that. In terms of the magic, I have always loved building magic systems. So, my series was magical as well. I knew that I wanted to, and that I had to distinguish this type of magic from what is in the series. So it was kind of research on different powers, what their capabilities are, and then, I'm a big proponent, and if you're going to have a magic system, there needs to be rules. You can't just be doing magic and vibes. That's because then where's the tension? So it was equal parts. What are these powers? What are their limitations? And then what is a limitation for this world overall? And I really knew also I wanted to have it where there was no such thing as evil or dark magic and light magic. It was all the intention. Because that's how human nature is. That's for so much of it how I see people, how I see things. It's what's the intention behind these actions.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Zora, because she's that bitch, but she's also like, she's so confident in her body and in her, her person, her like her image. But then there's this other side of her that she's so not sure of, wants to hide, her necromancy part. So I just found that was such an interesting combination, because on the one hand, she's like, she's quick with the zingers when like MK would come at her, and she just, whoom, she would fire right back. But when it came to her magic, she had no idea really who she was. So let's talk about her.
I loved writing Zora. I knew 2 things when I thought of her characterization. So that she was going to be a necromancer, and with that would come some uncertainty, because who wants to see people's last moments, right? I don't think that would be fun for anybody. And then I also knew that I wanted her to be strong and have kind of soft edges. So often in fantasy we have main characters where they're a badass female, but they like to get their nails done. They like to wear makeup. They like to enjoy those feminine aspects that they enjoy about themselves. So I knew that I wanted that to be part of her. And I didn't want her to apologize for who she is. She's a tall, she's a plus size, she's a darker skinned Black woman, she's bisexual. I didn't want her to apologize for any of that, because she doesn't see the need to apologize for that. That is who she is.
I love that.
Yeah, and at the same time, I wanted to add that complication of she's so confident in this all of these other areas, 99% of her being, and then there's this 1% that scares her and makes her second guess herself. But it's a big part of who she is, and I wanted to blend that, so then by the end of the story, you see whether she's able to come to terms with that or not.
Yeah, because that one part in the book where Birdie, just kind of takes her trial by fire and takes her into the cemetery, and she's like, look, you can do this. She's like, yeah, you have your powder, but you got to do this, and she makes her focus and, use her intention to make the ghost go away. And then Zora's just like, I did it. She was just so happy that she finally had, the beginnings of some type of control over her powers. And it was just funny because, she never knew that she could do that. She just thought that, she had to just deal with the ghosts being around her. And it's so funny because in the restaurant when Birdie first met her, I just got so tickled how she was just sitting there and she just, just shrugged her shoulder. I'm like, there's a whole ghost behind this woman. And she's just like, there could not be a whole ghost behind me. And me just sit there reading my menu like, I would be freaking out.
Right. And I think most people would be. And I wanted, because it's a kind of a little bit of an analogy for any kind of anxiety or depression or anything like that, right? Of course, there's like the clinical, maybe chemical imbalances, but as somebody who I struggle with anxiety, it was very cathartic writing that part of Zora because it's something she feels she can't control. It's been exploited. She can't really talk to too many people because what are they going to say? Even if she talks to other witches, she's had that experience or been around people who, without her even needing to say that she's a necromancer, who have been like, necromancers, fuck them. And so that really hardens you because then you're thinking, who can I talk to? I can't talk to anybody about this.
Right.
And I wanted her to have that moment of knowing that she could do it. I didn't want Birdie to be the one to swoop in and save her. She just is that person and gives her the tools. And I think that that's so important, especially in our community, like having a mentor, having that person who can be like, it's inside of you. You have everything that you need. I'm just helping you to unlock that box for you to just come into your full power.
Absolutely.
And that was a fun scene to write.
Yeah, I could kind of, because it's so empowering when you finally realize that you have control over something that you thought for your whole life that you didn't have control over.
Right.
And I just always thought it was ironic too that, you have these witches who, by larger society, witches are like, people are just like, you're a witch? No, but they have the nerve to shut her down because she's a necromancer. I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
You're being hypocritical because people shut y'all down because you're witches, and then you're going to turn around and shut her down because she could see dead people? I mean... And that occurs so often in marginalized groups, right? Where the oppressed will become the oppressor, where when it comes to like your black womanhood, or if you're queer and you're black, or any other kind of intersectionality, if somebody has just a little bit of a leg up, there's always that opportunity for them to exploit that and think, well, I'm not that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to explore that in this community because, again, it seems to be pervasive no matter what marginalized identity you have, where there's always the ability for certain people or inclination to go, I'm above you.
Yeah. And that's all about insecurity, too. But that's a whole nother conversation.
One that we could have at length.
We could do like an entire year's podcast on that and probably still not cover it all.
Right. That part.
So now, Birdie, she has an ulterior motive for Zora from the start because she sees Zora sitting at the restaurant. She sees her do the shrug and she knows immediately who she is. But why not? I mean, somebody like Birdie, I would imagine she knows necromancers in her own community. So why go for Zora? Why not go with a necromancer she knew, somebody that she was familiar with?
So I think for Birdie, it's a combination of things. Firstly, she is naturally a mother hen character, in part because of what happened to her, because she's somebody who also, once she realized she had these powers, quickly became overwhelmed by them and had no idea how to even teleport, how to even, what is this witch thing inside of me? And so, through Marquita, her fiance's tutelage and love and care, she was able to grow into her own. So I think it's a part of it is that whole, okay, I see myself in you, and I know how overwhelmed I was, and I don't want that for anybody else. Mm-hmm. But then it's also like that whole, okay, let me get somebody who's green, because maybe they won't say no. Okay. Maybe they'll like, I can kind of mold them a little bit to what I need them to do. Okay. So it's those things, and I would say more so the former, that mother hen type, because that's very much her character. She likes to be the person that people go to. She likes to take care of the witches, but she's also not afraid to tell people about themselves, which is probably one of my favorite parts about her.
Yeah, Birdie suffers no fools. She's not that person.
And honestly, none of the characters really do. They all, in their own way, kind of stand up for themselves, even if it's, like Whitley, who is, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm not going to walk around with my face fixed and pretend like I'm happy when I'm not. Why should I?
And she even says as much in the book. She's like, why try to hide anything? Whether I'm turned on, whether I'm angry, whether I'm upset. She was like, what's the purpose? She literally says that. Yeah. So now Tamar is a witch, but I love that he is also going for his doctorate, because he specifically said he wants to help Black queer witches.
Yes.
Why was it important to have him reveal this ambition, obviously, to Zora, but to your readers as well?
Because I wanted witches to be multifaceted. I didn't want them to be so often I keep saying that so often. In a lot of like urban fantasy works, that's all they are, is just witches. And I wanted to show that, or maybe they have a job as like funnily enough, a bartender. But I wanted to show that these characters have other ambitions beyond allowing their witchcraft to be the center of their world. And for Tamar, as somebody who grew up having a grandma who fostered his gifts, but then having friends who had multiple different experiences, he's just naturally drawn to helping people and to talking people through situations. And then he thought, I want to help my people, and this is how I can do it.
I feel like he's almost like a male version. He's like Birdie's, the male version of Birdie, because he has that kind of mothering spirit too, where he wants to help people and, wants to show them that they have that power inside of them. So I feel like they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, they are. They were both really fun to write, but with Tamar, I wanted to explore a little bit of an androgynous side, a little bit more of a gender queer side, where he's with his fashion and his makeup and his kind of persona. It's not quite aligning with what society would think is a traditional masculine person. And his characterization, very much like Zora's, came to me very quickly. Yes. He was actually inspired by, there's this YouTuber I watch called Maddie Rants, and he does a lot of recaps for Drag Race. And so he inspired Tamar a lot, just with the quick wit and the phrasing and just his cadence of speech. So if I could ever get him to read the book, I would be thrilled. It's a dream of mine, honestly.
Well, with Tamar's so funny. I think that I cracked up laughing when he changed into a cat when they were sneaking into that house. And the guy was holding him, picked him up, was holding him. And when he came back out later on, they were like, you okay? He was like, I'm okay, but I don't ever want that man to touch me again because he smells like Marlboros. Tamar was traumatized. He was like, ew. I must wash my body.
Right. Not this delicate skin.
No. He's like, oh, I don't ever want to be touched by him again. That just tickled me so much. I'm sitting here thinking about it now. I got to try not to laugh, but it tickled me. That tickled me. Tamar is too much. He's that person that is just like, he's the kind of person that will make you laugh when he's not even trying to make you laugh. He's just, he's that kind of person.
And for certain people, he will make you laugh even when he's reading you, which is that's a very unique skill for to be reading somebody and they don't even know they're being read.
Yeah. Which he did to Zora a lot in the beginning. Yes. Yeah. Poor Zora. I was like, she didn't even understand that he's just telling her all about herself. And she tried to come back with the zingers a little bit, but he was like, no.
Right.
So now when Zora is first learning about witches at the autumnal equinox that she's attending, Tamar lets her know that her knowledge about the autumnal equinox and about witches is white people witch shit. And I love that in your story, Black witches have their own culture. And I love the line from the book where you say, we exist at the intersection of demonization and marginalization, and yet you all, somehow managed to push through. And Bertie said that to everybody in the crowd, that was part of the house. So tell us more about your decision to include a discussion around racism within the witch community. Because honestly, I was like, they're witches. I would never thought of witches as Black and white. I just thought witches. So tell us your decision to include that.
Yeah. Like the conversation earlier about intersectionality and how the oppressed can be oppressors as well. I wanted to address that because also in a lot of witch-based media, when there are... American Horror Story Coven is a perfect example where there's the witches and then the ones who are voodoo practitioners, like Marie Laveau. And even though, Angela Bassett's character and Jessica Lange's character are supposed to be both powerful, there's always this subtle underlying message that Jessica Lange and her ilk are much more powerful. And to me, that never made sense. Because Marie Laveau has gods on her side. She has spirits on her side. She has ancestors on her side. But that's what happens when these stories get told from a white gaze, from a white lens, to white people who are probably the predominant viewers. And so obviously I didn't want that. I wanted to show our power, but also hint a little bit at the reality of what these witches are facing. That they created their own culture, they created their own house system because they weren't wanted or they were ostracized by other witches, by white witches. And then look what they did. They took it, they made it better, they flipped it, they have their own flavor, their own sauce, and now they're just, that's them over there. We got our own thing, our own special ingredients, and let's put you on games, or because you've not lived until you've experienced what we have to offer.
Right. Exactly. And, as per usual, you give Black people something, you shut them out of something, they're going to make their own, and it's going to be 100 times better than what you shut them out of, so. And then they get jealous, and then they try and tear it all down. But that's another discussion. Another discussion,
yeah. There was this video that was talking about Halle Bailey getting cast as Little Mermaid, and how, obviously the uproar. And this lady was saying, well, yeah, I mean... If I were white people, I would be mad too, because, I created this thing, and then here Black people come along and make it 1,300% better. They said they have Wizard of Oz, and we said, fuck Dorothy and Toto, and we're going to be seen in green with the Wiz.
That's right. That's the Wiz, baby. And we going to ease on down the road.
Yes. We're wearing rubies on our yachts, dead red, down the road.
Down the road, baby. Dancing down the road in style and on rhythm. Just saying.
That part.
Now, we're not going to talk too much about Jabari because I don't like his ass.
Which is the appropriate response, I would have to say.
Yes. And plus, he's kind of integral to the story, so we can't really talk too much about him. But tell us a little bit about Jabari.
Jabari is, to a certain extent, every stereotype about a bisexual person. He is, when people think of bisexuals, they think of people who just want to have sex with everybody. Mm-hmm. They're just for the streets. They're for everybody. They're open to relationships with anybody and situationships and one-night stands with everybody. Mm-hmm. I did do that purposefully, and in part because there is other bisexual representation that is healthier than that. Right. Mm-hmm. So I didn't, it'd be one thing if he was the only one. But he's what I refer to in the book as a disaster bi. So he just lives his life the way that he wants to. He's for everybody. He's for the streets. But he's also calculating. He's also charismatic. Mm-hmm. He also has great fashion sense. Mm-hmm. And he's very multi-layered. He's somebody who uses sound waves. That his power is using sound waves to heal or to hurt. Mm-hmm. That was a fun one to kind of come up with. It's kind of a mix of like an echolocation and like a banshee and things like that. So his powers were great to come up with. And just the banter between he and Zora, those are fun scenes to write. Because she sees how attractive she is. She knows that he's fine. She says he is fine. Mm-hmm. But she also, I think, to a certain extent, has his number a little bit and is like, you would ruin my life, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And
he is like Noble from We Are the Origin. They are both like these fountains from which you can take a drink, but, don't expect any kind of faithfulness or anything like that.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see Jabari and Noble in a room together for sure. Yeah, and the string of hearts that they have broken along with it. Because that one scene where they were talking about Jabari and everybody just commented on who Jabari had slept with. I was like, well, damn, is there anybody in the house that he has not slept with? I mean, really? Right. Birdie, for sure, not Birdie.
But listen. That's the only one, because he had notches in his belt and he was really trying to make Zora the next one. He really was.
Right. Which is why the scene where she's at the bar and he's saying, I want to get to know you at first. And she rejects him. That's why that scene is so pivotal, because number one, he's not really ever been rejected in that way. Right. By somebody new. By somebody who he can tell that she finds him attractive. But he hasn't been rejected. And certainly he wasn't expected to be rejected for Whitley, who he doesn't really think much of. So it's not only a rejection of him, but a rejection of him for somebody he thinks is lesser than him.
Absolutely.
Which is further cements his ain't shitness.
God, Jabari. I can't deal with him. I was just like, I had my thoughts about him too through the whole story. I was like, yeah, okay. This Buster right here. Whatever. Now, Whitley got a really bad rap because she made a mistake as a young person that got her sent away. But it also made the witches of her house resent her. Let's talk about Whitley a little bit.
So, I loved writing all of these characters. Whitley was definitely a different take on somebody who is strong and standing up for themselves. All the other characters are very snap back and quick to just respond. Very Viper-like. Whereas Whitley is just that, I don't care enough about you to say anything, so I'm just gonna, you're gonna see it in my face, but I don't care enough about you, so I'm just, whatever, I don't even want to be here. The walking embodiment of I don't want to be here. She is somebody who is a conjurer, so she's able to conjure things from thin air. Anything she's seen, she hasn't seen, and it comes to her in a flurry of pink smoke. And she's a hairstylist. So again, you know, having these witches have other careers outside of being witches.
Right.
But she's definitely guarded, and she's a little bit untrusting of Zora when she brings her a drink and wants to actively get to know her, because nobody else has really tried in the house system. Right,
because they are just, they're immediately upset with her because they don't feel like she needed to be the head of the house. And they feel like she got it through, you know, her family connections and not because the proper process for becoming the head of a house. But Zora doesn't really, you know, because Zora's not really versed in all of that, she doesn't care about all that. She's just like, why is everybody, you know, not talking to her, and why is she so stank? And she actually, you know, goes about trying to find out who Whitley is and what she's about, which I think is why, you know, Whitley ends up being receptive to her, because of the fact that she's the only one that's really made an effort to really try and talk to her and see who, you know, who she is.
Right. And the scene where, you know, of course everybody has questions as to why Zora is there, where she came from. And this scene is very important when they first meet, where, you know, Whitley's saying, where'd you come from? Memphis. And I'm going to be staying at, you know, Birdie's. And she's, is that better than where you came from? And Zora says yes, and kind of braces herself for more questions. And Whitley's like, okay. And I think it's important for Zora to have somebody that just accepts. You can tell me when you're ready, or you cannot tell me. And that's okay. And I think that we all kind of need that person who can see, like, when to stop. When to stop asking you questions, when to keep going, when you need space, when you don't need space, when you need honesty, and when you need a hug. And Whitley ends up becoming that for Zora.
Yeah, Whitley does not waste her energy on people. She's very frugal with her energy, and she picks and chooses what she's going to direct her energy towards, and what she's going to, you know, interact with and not interact with. And I think I like that about her, because, you know, a lot of times we get upset with people and give people our energy who really shouldn't even have our energy. So I really like that about, I think Whitley's probably, Zora is probably my favorite, but I would say Whitley's probably tied. Yeah, as far as being my favorite character.
I can see that, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character out of all the ones you wrote?
Zora and Tamar.
Okay.
They're tied. And I think that it's good that they're tied, because they're so bonded. Like, right away they become, like, fast friends. And Tamar's right away invested in her and her growth and who she is as a person.
Yeah.
And he's just so funny. It was so fun writing his his one-lines.
Don't you wish that you had somebody like Tamar, like, for real in your life? Like, just that person you could just... Because he's the kind of person you could call any time of day or night, and he might read you and give you shit, but he's also gonna, like, love you and, like, be like, okay, it's all right. We're gonna fix this. You know, you're still a good person. We just made a choice here that we have to deal with the ramifications of, but that doesn't, you know, define who you are. He's just that kind of person.
Yeah, which is important for Zora to hear, because she had been carrying such guilt around her abilities, around what she did with those abilities, how she left Memphis. And so having somebody tell her it's not your fault really opens her up a lot more.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of houses, tell us how you came up with the houses and the roles, because you have the house divinity, house soliloquy, and house transcendence, and they each have a specific role. So tell us how you came up with that.
So part of that is watching Pose and being into like legendary and ballroom culture, and starting to immerse myself more into that, and how for ballroom there's these houses that are there to take care of these communities of people that are in the houses, and then they also go and they dance and they march and do these ballrooms as houses. So I kind of took inspiration from that, and then I wanted three. Three seems to be a pretty good number in witchcraft and numerology and all of these different kinds of cultures. It makes sense just to have three. And then I thought, well, what would they be responsible for? What would they help maintain? And it just kind of made sense that you'd have one that was responsible for making sure that witches are doing what they're supposed to do when it comes to their magic. They're honoring and communicating with the gods. They're keeping sacred these rituals and ritual days. And then, you have magical law. Well, what about human law? Because this is still happening in our world, and nobody wants to have a witch get pulled over for a speeding ticket or arson or anything like that. So you have to have somebody who's going to be responsible for making sure they stay on that straight and narrow, but also kind of ingratiate themselves a little bit with the law so they know what's happening. And then you have all of that, which is very kind of rote and adult kind of responsibilities. So then you needed a house that was all about fun. That was all about decadence. That was about making sure witches feel empowered. And so then Transcendence, as I was looking up these names, Transcendence came, and that the title very quickly came after that.
Okay. All right. So let's move to the writing side of the show, since you're talking about, the name and all of that. Can we talk about the cover of this book?
Yes.
Because I love it.
So amazing.
It is amazing.
So amazing.
And I will put it up on the screen so that everybody can see on YouTube. So let's talk about that cover. Did you have the idea for the design, or did the artist come up with it? Because you had Taj do it, right?
Yeah. So shout out to her. She's such an amazing designer. She's so easy to work with. I knew I wanted to have Zora on the cover, and I knew I wanted some way to show her powers. So we went through a couple drafts, and then I hopped on Canva and really kind of started to conceptualize what that would look like, and kind of sent her... Do you remember those like mood boards where people would take magazine clippings and kind of construct them?
Right.
It was very that, but in Canva. So I was like taking somebody's face, and then a skull, and then a hair clip, and then an outfit, and pasted it all together and went, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I wanted Zora on the cover. I wanted some way to represent the South, so we have magnolias in her hair. I wanted how do we represent her powers, so we have the skull. And then there's Spanish moss behind her to also represent being Savannah. And I didn't want her wearing like a t-shirt or something. She's a burlesque dancer. Mama needs to look sexy. Right. And I wanted that. And I knew I wanted her natural hair because Zora wears her hair natural. She doesn't straighten it or anything. And nails and lipstick, and for her to look defiant and fierce and like intriguing. And Taj nailed it. I can't stop looking at the cover. It's so gorgeous.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. And I can't get the full effect because right now I just have the ebook, but I need to get like a paperback version so I can have it on the shelf, see it in person. Because, I mean, it's beautiful on, in electronic format, but I just need to see it on an actual cover because I think it'll be even prettier. Did a good job with that. So tell us what being an indie author means to you.
Oh, that's a great... You are coming through with the good questions. I'm loving this. Being an indie author means having more control over my intellectual property. It means hard work, but great payoff, because when you're indie, the buck stops with you. You're your accountant, you're the manager, you're the talent, you're the marketing, you're all of it. And for this book specifically, I did the ebook formatting. I did, I had the design for the covers, but I added the text on the front, spine, back cover, and I merged them together. And Chelsea helped with the interior formatting for the paperback. But I did a lot more this time. So I was also kind of a graphic artist in this case. And it was a lot of hard work, a lot of raging and insecurity, which is also what being an indie author means to me, because I think it definitely pushes you out of your comfort zone, because you have to be the one to market you as your brand and market your books.
Right.
But I wouldn't change it, because I don't want to go trad, especially with the climate of trad today, where you're doing just as much marketing, if not more, than an indie author, because you may or may not be the special one that trad decides to pick, and then you're the book of the quarter, I wouldn't want my royalties split in 4 or 5, however many chunks they get now. I wouldn't want to have to change my story, what is it, Taking of Jake Livingston? I've heard that was changed a lot. And so I didn't. This book is great as it is. It is black. It is unapologetically black. It is unapologetically queer. And I did not want to have to change any of that. And so,
or have somebody tell you that they don't understand it or can't relate to it.
Or have somebody who not be able to choose my editor. Because so much of this book and why it is the way it is because of my editor, because those nuances, those cultural references, the AAVE that's in the book, that was there and left intact because I have a black editor. And if I don't think it would be intact if I had a white editor, or I'd have to be going back and rejecting those suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely, because or they would want to make it more of a trope and make it so stereotypical that it's like that's not the way black people talk, so it's just having control and picking your team. And picking a team that understands you and your culture, and so that you don't have to sit there and try and explain things before you can get to the meat of getting the editing and all of that done. That's hugely important, and it's something you're only going to get as an indie author. Absolutely. Yep. So, In the House of Transcendence is your third book, like, solo. I know you have the other 2 anthologies that you've worked on, but this is your third solo book. Do you have any other works in progress right now?
Oh, so I'm currently working on a horror short story for an anthology. It's a take on the final girl trope. The prompt was a final girl. The prompt was a black or brown final girl, because the anthology is for like BIPOC writers. So I'm working on a short story for that, all black, all queer cast, playing with some kind of classic horror references. So if you're a fan of like Scream or Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that, you'll definitely get those references in there.
Okay.
And then beyond that, I'm kind of toying between going back to the series and wrapping it up with a final book, or doing another standalone title. That's kind of the way of being an author, is multiple. I like to say it's like a little crush, I got my little crush instead of an idea. So it's like I have a little crush for the into the series, and then the little black vampire, like Succession meets like Knives Out kind of vibe. So
Well, you know what I need. I need the novella of Zora's mama, because I'm telling you,
those powers came from somewhere for sure.
They came from somewhere. Now, either they skipped a generation, or her mama hid those powers because she got. I told you I have like a whole storyline in my head where like she got shunned, you know, because her parents were really Christian, and maybe it skipped her mama, but then she got it. And, you know, her family was real religious, and so they came down on her and called her a devil, blah, blah, blah. And then her daughter I'm telling you, there's something there, that power that just didn't come out of nowhere. Somebody back in that line has some power. So, you know, I need a novella because I need some backstory.
Look, I'm going to have to give it to you. There's also, like, one of the other stories I've been thinking about, you know, working on is in Girls of Might and Magic is called Funnel Cake. It was a short story set in the 70s about a group of black monster hunters who, you know, work a funnel cake stand by day and kill monsters by night. And
what? That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it's in Girls of Might and Magic.
Okay.
I set it in San Jose in 1973, purposely because that's when my mom was a teenager, and so I was really having those, like, she was telling me a lot about her teenage time. Apparently she used to be a drag racer.
Oh, wow.
So Mama has a lot of stories that I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this in this book, you know, and kind of really dedicate a book to her, you know, from that time period. She, I think, deserves that to see herself.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I'm down. Yeah. Just let me know when it comes out.
You'll be priority. Yeah. Speed dial.
I know I won't be like number 1 and number 2, but if I'm in the top 10, I'm good.
You like MySpace. You're in my top 8.
Oh, all right. There we go. I'm happy. I'm in the top 8. I'm good. Now tell us about this podcast, the Horror Ho Support Group.
Yes. So I'm a diehard horror fan. It's my second favorite genre, only to fantasy. And myself and my co-host Samara Hill, we just really wanted to come together to start talking about horror. We do a podcast or a book club along with a podcast that meets twice a month on Saturday mornings. And we talk about the monthly book. And then in the podcast, we talk about all types of horror. We do a review at the end of the month. The last episode is usually a recap of the book we just finished reading. And then we talk about a topic. So we'll go, okay, vampires. Let's talk about all different types of horror that we've seen, that we've read, that has to do with vampires. And we generally tailor it to BIPOC works. So for the book club specifically, we generally, like 99% of our books are written by Black, brown, other authors of color. And then for the podcast, sometimes we'll talk about things that are not written by BIPOC creators, but generally we try to keep it for the culture, keep it for the things that we have written or contributed to. So October, we're going to be reading House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, and I'm very excited because I came home from a business trip and my copy was sitting on my counter. And
book mail.
The best. So basically tonight we'll be making chili and reading that book.
Nice. Awesome. So now, where can readers find your books?
So you can find my books on Amazon. You can also, if you go to the Melanin Library, you can click the link there and then you can get my books. So in addition to supporting me, you would also be supporting the Melanin Library. And you should just be doing that. Supporting Black-owned businesses, supporting smaller businesses, women-owned businesses. Just get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can we find your podcast? Is that on Spotify and all those places?
So the podcast is on Spotify. We release 2 episodes every Thursday.
Okay, great. And where can we find you on social media?
So I will say I've fallen into the TikTok trap. So I am most active on TikTok and Twitter.
Okay.
Then you can also find me on Instagram. You can also find me on YouTube. I've taken a bit of a hiatus from my YouTube channel.
Okay.
But I will be making a return, I'll say sometime before the end of the year.
Okay.
And you could, find me. I talk about just random stuff. Random authoring, bookish stuff. It's
Okay.
fun.
And do you have a website?
Yes, I'm at amandarosswrites.com.
All right. There we go. Well, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for sharing your time and talents with me today. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time. You're such a wonderful interviewer. I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Booze and Bros, you know what time it is. Today's quote comes from the late, great Ralph Ellison in his book, Invisible Man. And he said, "I am an invisible man. I am a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me." Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read, and I'm out. You've been listening to Between the Reads. I'm your host, Audra Russell. Thanks for lending me your ear. If you enjoy this content, please consider supporting this independent podcast by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/betweenthereads or making a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next week for another great episode.